Okay, in this video, we're going to look at some more common question types on the IELTS listening test. Why is this important? Again, it's another chance for you to become familiar with the different kinds of questions that you might get on the test. There are different ways of answering these different questions. We're going to take a look at some more of these in this video. In this video, we're going to look more at selecting from a list. We're going to match some information. Then we're going to do making notes. Then at the end, there'll be some multiple choice questions. Okay, the first set of questions are matching information. These are actually questions which are adapted from the grade website. Please read the instructions carefully. Okay, we are often told about the listening that we're going to hear in the test. In this case, we are told you will hear a presenter giving information about a tourist destination. We know that there will be a presenter, so this means it will be a monologue, so just one person talking in this case. I know you don't get a lot of time in the test, but one thing you should absolutely try to do is make as many predictions as possible. In this case, we need to match a list of tourist information to 5 different locations. I think it's possible for you to make common sense predictions. For example, saltwater crocodile viewing is one of the different types of tourist information on the list. Now, perhaps this takes place in Tully River. I can see at the bottom there is also a Daintree River, but for the purpose of the prediction, let's just predict that saltwater crocodile viewing takes place along Tully River. The beach holiday, perhaps this is a more obvious one. I'm going to predict that this takes place at Trinity Beach. Whitewater rafting, now I can see Daintree River down the bottom, so perhaps whitewater rafting takes place on Daintree River. The rainforest experience, maybe there is an aerial walkway through the rainforest, so I'm going to say number 4 for rainforest experience. I'm left with 3 options. Chubbagai Cultural Park doesn't sound like a place for skydiving tours or bungee jumping. Perhaps there is a night fire ceremony at the park. So we're going to listen to the audio. Let's see if our predictions are correct.
If a beach holiday is what you are after, then the popular northern beaches, Trinity Beach and Palm Cove, are just 20-minute drive north of the city. Or if you don't mind going a little further, Port Douglas and the beautiful 4 Mile Beach are only 70 kilometres north of Cairns. And if you want adrenaline, Cairns is a thrill seeker's paradise. There is whitewater rafting on Tully River, A.J. Hackett's bungee jumping and skydiving tours which depart from near Cairns, Esplanade or Chinaman Creek. The ancient rainforests that surround Cairns have been guarded by the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people for thousands of years. Take a short drive out of Cairns to experience Chubbagai Cultural Park and find out more about the fascinating Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander culture and how they mastered living in this amazing land. Stay until after dark to witness the magical night fire ceremony. Finally, no trip to Cairns would be complete without exploring the World Heritage listed Daintree Rainforest. Walk at mid-level through the rainforest, on the aerial walkway, or be your own explorer on a self-guided tour. You can also take a cruise along the Daintree River to see some of far north Queensland's famous locals, the saltwater crocodiles. So welcome again to our tropical paradise, and I'm sure you will have an unforgettable time.
Okay, let's go through and let's check our answers using the script. Now, hopefully the first thing you all heard was a reference to a beach holiday. If a beach holiday is what you are after, then the popular northern beaches, Trinity Beach and Palm Cove, are just a 20-minute drive north of the city. So there is the first answer. But what I think is really important, in the test, just make notes on your question paper. You are given 10 minutes at the end of the test to transfer your answers. So while you're listening, don't try to be all pretty and make your answer sheet nice and clean. Just scribble down notes as quickly as you can. You get that time at the end to tidy everything up. So there I have done it for you. I've just made a quick note on the question paper. Next to beach holiday, I've put Trinity. The next reference is to whitewater rafting. There is whitewater rafting on Tully River. Again, I'm going to make a quick note on the question paper. Next to whitewater rafting, I just put Tully. Okay, the next reference we hear is Jabakai Cultural Park. Now, this is a more difficult one because we're made to wait to confirm the answer. So, take a short drive out of Cairns to experience Jabakai Cultural Park and find out more about the fascinating Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander culture and how they mastered living at one in this amazing land. Stay until after dark to witness the magical night fire ceremony. Our prediction was correct. And again, I'm just going to make a quick note. I'm just going to use the initials. But we're made to wait to confirm the answer. So you always have to listen really carefully to check everything. Okay, the next reference is to Daintree Rainforest. Now, we hear something about walk. It says walk at mid-level through the rainforest. And of course, this is on the aerial walkway. So again, another prediction that was correct. And I just make a further note here on my paper. So rainforest experience was the walkway. And finally, we're told you can take a cruise along the Daintree River to see some of far north Queensland's famous locals, the saltwater crocodiles. It doesn't tell us the exact words on the question paper, but obviously that will be the saltwater crocodile viewing. Okay, then you can confirm all your answers from your notes. So always just making notes is the best way while you're listening. For the next set of questions, we're going to make notes on our paper. So please read these instructions carefully. Okay, it says, please complete the information below, and the very common instructions, write no more than 3 words for each answer. This means we could write 1 word, 2 words, or 3 words, but we can't write 4, 5, or any more words than 3. This is actually a listening file and some questions that are adapted from the Grade website. So in this case, we will hear a man asking for information about driving lessons over the phone. This means that there will be 2 people talking, and we are likely we will hear language related to driving. So here is the note-taking question paper. It's highly likely, or we can absolutely expect, that the information will be given in order. What's important though is we can see the name of the customer is Kenneth. So we should use his name, or when his name is said, as a reference to pick up where we can listen for the rest of the information. So I know you don't have a lot of time during the test before you hear the audio file, but it's so important, as always, just go through and make as many predictions as you can. So we know we have to find out how many lessons Ken or Kenneth requires. We don't really know this, but as soon as we make a prediction, hopefully what will happen is when we listen, our mind will be more active, and we will be checking our prediction against what we hear. So let's just say that Kenneth needs 4 lessons. So as for the date, again, we have no idea, but for the sake of the prediction, let's just say it's May the 2nd. And then what we will do is we will check our prediction against what we hear. It's always easier when you are checking something that you listen to. So as for the time of the lesson, who knows? But let's just say 11 a.m. and we're going to check that prediction. Do we hear 11 a.m. in the listening? The telephone number, some of you may live in Australia or some of you may have lived in Australia. That's the convention for an Australian mobile phone number. A little bit of general knowledge, but maybe they're going to use the same convention in the listening file. But again, it's just something for us to check. Now, what's missing here from the address is the street name. A very common street name is Main Street. Probably a very low chance that that will be the answer, but we're going to check the name of the street against what we hear. So let's listen now to the file.
Good afternoon, ProDrive Driving School. How can I help you?
Hi, my name is Ken Palmer. I have a driving test in May, so I was wondering if I could book some driving lessons.
Most certainly. Are you going to sit the practical driving test?
Yes, I have already passed the written tests, so I know all of the road rules. I just don't feel that confident behind the wheel.
I can completely understand. Most of the people who book lessons are in the same situation as you. Our driving instructors will help develop your driving skills so that you can pass the driving test.
Okay, that's great. How many lessons do you think I'll need?
Most people who need preparation for the practical driving test book 4 90-minute lessons.
That's fine. What lesson times do you have available?
Well, do you want to have your lessons in the mornings, afternoons, or evenings?
In the evenings, please. I work during the day.
Okay, so it is Monday, April 5th today, and you mentioned that your practical test is in May. So, would you like to have one lesson a week during the month of April?
Yes, please. I think that would work out well.
Okay, well, our instructor, Brian Tang, is available on Tuesdays from 5:30 to 7 p.m. Does that time suit you?
Yes, that's great. Thank you.
Excellent. Now, I just need to get some details from you. Could you please tell me your whole name?
Sure. It's Kenneth Palmer, but I go by Ken.
Thank you. And what is your phone number, Ken?
It's 02 9876 5662.
Do you have a work phone number?
No, I just use my mobile number.
Okay. Now, Brian will pick you up for each lesson, so can I please get your address?
It's Unit 4, 39 Dandelion Street, North Sydney.
Sorry, could you please spell that for me?
Sure, it's DANDELION.
Good afternoon, ProDrive Driving School. How can I help you?
Hi, my name is Ken Palmer. I have a driving test in May, so I was wondering if I could book some driving lessons.
Most certainly. Are you going to sit the practical driving test?
Yes, I have already passed the written tests, so I know all of the road rules. I just don't feel that confident behind the wheel.
I can completely understand. Most of the people who book lessons are in the same situation as you. Our driving instructors will help develop your driving skills so that you can pass the driving test.
Okay, that's great. How many lessons do you think I'll need?
Most people who need preparation for the practical driving test book 4 90-minute lessons.
That's fine. What lesson times do you have available?
Well, do you want to have your lessons in the mornings, afternoons, or evenings?
In the evenings, please. I work during the day.
Okay, so it is Monday, April 5th today, and you mentioned that your practical test is in May. So, would you like to have one lesson a week during the month of April?
Yes, please. I think that would work out well.
Okay, well, our instructor, Brian Tang, is available on Tuesdays from 5:30 to 7 p.m. Does that time suit you?
Yes, that's great. Thank you.
Excellent. Now, I just need to get some details from you. Could you please tell me your whole name?
Sure. It's Kenneth Palmer, but I go by Ken.
Thank you. And what is your phone number, Ken?
It's 02 9876 5662.
Do you have a work phone number?
No, I just use my mobile number.
Okay. Now, Brian will pick you up for each lesson, so can I please get your address?
It's Unit 4, 39 Dandelion Street, North Sydney.
Sorry, could you please spell that for me?
Sure, it's DANDELION.
Okay, let's go through and check our answers using the script. So again, we're listening for Ken or Kenneth introducing himself. That's going to be our first reference, and then we'll listen out for question 1. Here we have it. Ken introduces himself. Hi, my name is Ken Palmer. So then we're waiting to hear the answer to question 1. Later on, Ken asks a question. You can see it underlined. How many lessons do you think I'll need? The person from the company, Anna, she says, most people who need preparation for the practical driving test book 4 90-minute lessons. So straight away, we think maybe the answer is 4. And that's confirmed when Ken replies, that's fine. So again, you don't have a lot of time to be trying to confirm all your answers while you're listening. What's best is just make notes on your question paper. So in this case, I'm just going to circle 4. You can see I've changed the color to confirm the answer there. But I'm going to take the 10 minutes at the end of the listening test to be tidy with my answers on the answer paper. So next we're listening for the date. Our prediction was May the 2nd. Now, this was a more difficult one to answer. It's actually an inference. So we're told that today is Monday, April the 5th. And Anna continues, so you would like one lesson a week during the month of April? Ken replies, yes. So there's definitely a further confirmation that Ken will have 4 lessons. But then later, Anna says, well, our instructor, Brian Tang, is available on Tuesdays from 5:30 to 7 p.m. Does that time suit you? Ken replies, yes. So we actually have 2 answers there with Anna's sentence. So if today is April the 5th and Ken is going to take a lesson the next day on Tuesday, that means the lesson will be on April the 6th and the time of the lesson will be at 5:30. So a more difficult question. It requires you to really comprehend what you're listening to. So let's listen to the telephone number. So Anna, she asks a question directly to Ken. And what is your phone number, Ken? And Ken replies with the phone number. So you'll just have to listen really carefully and write those numbers down on your question paper. Again, don't worry about trying to be too neat. You have that 10 minutes at the end. And finally, Anna asks for his address. Now, this is very common in the IELTS. You're going to get some words, usually their names, could be a person's name. In this case, it's a street name, dandelion, and it's dictated for you. So you really don't want to get these ones wrong. You just have to listen really carefully. And again, just make those notes quickly on your question paper. So there we have it, all the answers. And let's move through to the multiple choice questions. If only multiple choice questions were as simple as their instructions. So we have to circle the correct letter A, B, or C, but definitely not as easy as that. In this case, we will hear a conversation between 2 university students about a presentation they have to give. This is another listening file and questions which are adapted from the Grade website. In fact, all of the listening files are from the Grade website. Now, it's very common to hear sections or to have listening sections related to education. In fact, most tests will have a section related to education. So this means we're going to hear different language, different phrases, words. It could be about high school, university. In this case, definitely university. So this is the difficulty with multiple choice questions. It's information overload. So I'm not going to tell you what to do at this point. I'm just going to leave the questions up on screen and give you a chance to read the questions and the multiple choices. Don't worry if you couldn't keep up. You can always press pause and the questions will be up on screen later. There are 2 more. I'll give you a chance to read the questions and the multiple choices. So what I hope you learned from reading all of the questions and the different choices was that there is a lot of information to deal with multiple choice questions. In fact, you can actually consider there are 18 different things if we tally up all of the questions and different choices. So this is why it's so important to identify the key words that we're looking for in each of the actual questions. Usually this can be done. Sometimes you have to complete part of a sentence with different choices. In this case, we're quite lucky because we have questions which we can listen to. For example, number 1, why doesn't Tim want to use cue cards? So I'm going to be listening really carefully to Tim and cue cards. Now, the information should be in the order that is given on the question paper. Hopefully that's the case. What I'm going to do though, is I'm not going to start scanning the choices until I hear something about Tim and cue cards. When I hear those keywords, then I'm going to start scanning through the different choices while I'm listening. But before then, I'm just basically going to focus on the question only. Same for number 2. I'm going to be listening out for something about slides and Tim. I want to know how many slides Tim will use. When I hear that information, when I get the cue in the listening, then I'm going to scan through the possibilities of 5, 10, or 15. On to number 3. The keywords I'm going to be listening out for are presentation, first topic, and introduction. Obviously, I need to know what will be the first topic of the presentation after the student's introduction. But until then, I'm basically going to put the different choices out of my mind so I don't get overloaded with information. On to question 4. The question being, how long is the question and answer section? There are 3 different choices, but I'm going to discard those choices until I hear those keywords and the cue that the answer is coming up. When was the flood? Again, the 3 different choices, I'm not going to start scanning those until I hear the cue to do so. Now, just a little bit of background because I'm not going to play the entire file, but if you were to listen to the entire listening file, you would know that the 2 names are Tim and Jack. So the information we're given at the beginning, Jack says, "Hi Tim, how are you?" And he replies, "I'm good, thanks, how about you?" So those are the 2 people in this listening file. Here are the questions again. So listen out for those keywords from the questions themselves and then scan through the different choices as you get the cue to do so. Let's listen now to the audio file.
Yeah, especially the presentation. Have you got any special tips for doing presentations?
Well, I'm going to make cue cards.
What? Are we allowed to do that?
Sure. Professor Archibald said he encourages that. It means you can better engage the audience.
Okay, but I don't think I'll use cue cards. I like to follow the keywords on the presentation slides as I go. I usually find I can remember all the important points. Plus, I always worry that I will drop cue cards or mix up the order.
But what if you miss something?
I don't think I will. As long as I follow the slides, I'll be fine.
Well, that's up to you. And I guess it's not too different from using cue cards.
I won't have too many slides. Maybe 15? So who's going to start?
How about we both introduce ourselves and our topic to the audience, and then you talk about the impact of dams on rivers upstream?
I'm happy with that. So will you then talk about the impact of dams downstream?
Yes. And you can finish off the presentation by talking about the effects of dams on humans.
That sounds like a good plan. And then we have the question and answer section after our 10-minute presentation.
Yes, and that'll take 5 minutes, won't it?
That's right. So maybe a good way to see how much we already remember is to test each other now.
I like that idea. I've got a good question for you about the potential for disaster.
Go ahead.
When did the Ban Chao Reservoir Dam flood happen?
I think I know the answer. Was it in 1975?
Wasn't it in 1974? Let's check.
Maybe it was 1976.
Here's the answer, and you were right the first time. So it sounds like you have read the article well.
I think I have. Anyhow, I'll ask you a few questions, and then I guess we better start making our slides.
Okay, let's go through and check the answers using the script. I'll show you how the scanning method works, the scanning of the multiple choices. So first of all, we're listening out for the key term, cue cards. Now, hopefully you heard 2 references to cue cards. Earlier in the listening file, Jack said, "Well, I'm going to make cue cards." Later on, Tim said, "Okay, but I don't think I'll use cue cards." So, as we scan through the different choices, we hear a reference to Professor Archibald. Jack says, "Professor Archibald said he encourages that. He encourages using cue cards." So that's contradicted on the question paper, where option A says, "Professor Archibald doesn't permit them." That means we can mark that as incorrect. The next reference is to C, where Tim says, I usually find that I can remember all the important points. Again, that contradicts what's on the question paper, where option C is he can't remember all of the main points. So use of synonyms again, important to main. That still applies to the listening test. Perhaps from a process of elimination, we can be sure that the answer is B, but let's check the answer anyway. And it's given when Tim says, plus I always worry that I will drop the cue cards. So why doesn't Tim want to use the cue cards? B, he thinks he might drop them. So again, it's just a process of scanning through those choices after we've heard the reference to the keyword, which is cue cards. Okay, moving on to question 2. How many slides will Tim use? So we're going to be scanning for 5, 10, or 15 at this point. Here is the reference to slides. Tim says, I won't have too many slides. Maybe 15. Sometimes you get easy questions like this. If that's the case, that's great. We don't have to do any more scanning. The answer is clear. How many slides will Tim use? 15. Moving on to question 3. What will be the first topic of the presentation after the student's introduction? At this stage, we can start scanning the different answers or the different choices. The impact of dams downstream, the impact of dams upstream, the impact of dams on people. Okay, we hear our first reference to an introduction. So how about we both introduce ourselves and our topic to the audience, and then you talk about the impact of dams on rivers upstream. Now, there's a lot to be scanning, and you have to listen at the same time. This is the difficulty, but hopefully you got that answer from hearing the keyword introduce, which is the different part of speech from introduction being the noun, and then they're using the verb, or Jack uses the verb form in the listening. But then later on, it's very clear, and then after you talk about the impact of dams on rivers upstream. Okay, so the answer for that one, 3B. Question 4, we're listening for the keyword or the key term, question and answer section. We want to know how long is the question and answer section. Then we can start scanning for the possibilities. Is it 5, 10, or 15 minutes? So, question and answer section. Hopefully you heard that reference. Then Jack says, yes, that'll take 5 minutes, won't it? Tim, that's right. So it's confirmed by Tim. Jack asks a question. Quite often you will have to listen to somebody asking a question which is answered by the other speaker. That's the case here. Again, Jack asks a question. The question and answer section, and that'll take 5 minutes, won't it? Tim, that's right. There we have the answer confirmed. The question and answer section will take 5 minutes. Okay, the final question. When was the flood? So hopefully you heard a reference to flood, right? So here it is, underlined for you. Now this was a difficult one because you really have to comprehend what's being said. The first question Tim asks, was it in 1975? We don't know if that's the correct answer. On the question paper, you might even want to put a question mark. Jack replies with another question. Wasn't it in 1974? Again, we can't be sure. Was it in 1974? Let's put a question mark. Another question. Maybe it was in 1976. But Jack confirms it at the end when he looks up in his book and he says, here's the answer. You will write the first time. Now, this is a difficulty. You had to remember what was the first reference or the first year or the first answer that was given. That was 1975. Definitely of the 5 different questions, this one was the most difficult. Okay, but hopefully you got it right. And the answer, when was the flood? 1975. Okay, just to recap, always make predictions. Predictions apply to all the different question types. Sometimes it's easier to make predictions than in other different types of questions. When you're doing matching information, make notes before you listen. Listen for references from your predictions. That especially applies to multiple choice questions. And in terms of multiple choice questions, listen and scan the multiple choice questions at the same time. Don't overload yourself too much. Okay, jump onto grade, see how well you can predict, practice until you are confident.